Chosen one, listen carefully. Have you ever felt the crushing weight of almost getting the breakthrough, almost touching your miracle, almost stepping into everything God whispered over your sleepless nights, only to watch it slip through your fingers like sand? What if I told you that in the next 72 hours, the 29th of August, 30th and 31st heaven is opening a vault that has been sealed since the day you were born? What if everything you've cried for, bled for, waited decades for, is sitting behind 3 spiritual locks, and most of God's people will walk right past them without even knowing? Here's the shocking truth they don't want you to know. You are 3 days away from either the greatest acceleration of your life or the most devastating spiritual sleep you've ever entered. There is no middle ground, no neutral zone, no maybe next time. Right now, while you're watching this, angelic forces are positioning themselves around these 3 dates. Demonic powers are mobilizing to blind you to what's coming. And you, precious chosen one, you're standing at the edge of a cliff, not knowing whether you're about to fly or fall. The 29th of August, 30th and 31st aren't just calendar dates. They're combination locks on a celestial vault. Miss the sequence, and that vault slams shut with a sound that echoes through eternity. But get it right, and everything changes. The enemy has been counting on your exhaustion. He's been banking on your doubt. He's been whispering, "You've missed too many moments. God's moved on. Your time has passed." That's the lie that will cost you everything. Before I go deeper, and what I'm about to reveal will shake you to your core, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. But right now, if you feel this message tugging at your spirit like a hook in your chest, if something ancient is stirring in your bones, I need you to do something. Type in the comments, "I will not miss my moment." Say it aloud. Let your voice carry the weight of decades of waiting. Seal it with the sound of your surrender. Because what I'm about to tell you about the 29th of August will either save your destiny or you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. The vault is opening. The question is, will you be ready to enter? Why does it feel like you've been living the same prayer for 20 years? Why does every door you approach crack open just enough to let hope slip in, then slam shut before you can walk through? Why have you been so close to your miracle that you could taste it, smell it, feel it in your bones, only to wake up the next morning with empty hands and a heavier heart? Dear chosen one, what I'm about to share with you isn't another inspirational message about patience or trusting God's timing. This is a prophetic warning about 3 specific dates that will either catapult you into everything heaven has been withholding, or seal you into a spiritual winter that could last the rest of your earthly days. You see, for decades you've felt it, haven't you? That restless stirring in your chest at 3 a.m., that knowing that you were made for more than paying bills and watching other people live their dreams, that bone-deep certainty that God whispered something over your life before you took your first breath. Something magnificent, something world-changing, something that would make the angels lean forward in their seats. But then, life happened. The diagnosis came, the spouse left, the children stopped calling, the business failed, the dreams got buried under the weight of just surviving another day. And slowly, quietly, you began to wonder if maybe you imagined it all. Maybe you were never chosen. Maybe you were just ordinary. That's exactly what the enemy was counting on. Listen to me carefully, beloved. Every delay you've endured, every disappointment that crushed your spirit, every season when heaven felt locked and your prayers echoed in empty air, none of it was random. None of it was punishment. All of it was positioning. Think of your life as a cosmic chessboard. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, God has been moving pieces you couldn't see. Every heartbreak positioned you for deeper compassion. Every financial struggle taught you to depend on him alone. Every betrayal showed you who you could really trust. Every closed door redirected you away from what would have destroyed you and toward what was destined to complete you. But here's what will shake you to your core. The 29th of August, 30th, and 31st. These aren't just the final days of summer. They're the moment when the king makes his decisive move on the board. The moment when all those years of positioning, all those decades of preparation, all that patient endurance finally explodes into divine acceleration. Scripture tells us in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Your season of almost is ending. Your season of everything is about to begin, but only if you recognize what's happening in these 3 critical days. Here's the mystery that most believers will miss entirely. Each of these 3 dates carries a unique spiritual frequency. One is bait designed to lure you back into old patterns that feel comfortable but will cost you your calling. One is silence, a deafening quiet that will test whether you can trust God when you can't feel him moving. One is sealing the moment when your response to the first 2 determines whether you step through the door or watch it close forever. The enemy knows what's coming. That's why the attacks on your peace have intensified lately. That's why depression keeps knocking at your door. That's why you've been feeling more isolated, more forgotten, more invisible than ever. Hell is in panic mode because your breakthrough isn't just coming, it's here, waiting, watching, ready to explode into your reality the moment you align with heaven's timing. But here's what terrifies me for God's people. Most of you will treat these 3 days like any other weekend. You'll sleep in, you'll binge-watch Netflix, you'll scroll through social media, watching other people live the life you've been praying for. And while you're distracted, while you're numb, while you're stuck in survival mode, the greatest opportunity of your lifetime will pass you by like a train you never even heard coming. Remember the parable Jesus told in Matthew 25 about the 10 virgins waiting for the bridegroom? 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. All 10 had lamps, all 10 had oil, all 10 were invited to the wedding. But when the bridegroom finally arrived, only 5 were ready. Only 5 had enough oil burning to light the way. The other 5 missed the moment they'd been waiting for their entire lives. Not because they weren't chosen, not because they weren't loved, but because they weren't watching. They weren't ready. They weren't aligned. Right now, as these words sink into your spirit, I can feel some of you pulling back. The old familiar voices are starting to whisper, "This sounds too good to be true. You've been disappointed before. Don't get your hopes up. Just keep your head down and survive until heaven." That's not wisdom, beloved. That's the voice of defeat, masquerading as humility. Your God is the same God who parted the Red Sea in one night. The same God who made the sun stand still for Joshua. The same God who raised Lazarus from a tomb that stank with 4 days of death. And if he could do that for them, what makes you think he's lost his power to move in your situation? The question that will determine your destiny isn't whether God is able. The question is whether you're available. Whether you'll be watching when he moves. Whether you'll be ready when he calls. Whether you'll have enough oil in your lamp when the bridegroom finally arrives. Because I'm telling you right now, with every fiber of my being, with 50 years of walking with the Almighty, with the authority of someone who has seen him move mountains in impossible situations, these 3 days aren't just important, they're everything. The chessboard is set, the pieces are in position, the king is about to move. The only question left is this: will you be ready to receive what he's been preparing to give you? Or will you be the one who slept through their own miracle? Listen to me carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you could save your spiritual life or destroy it completely. The 29th of August is not what it appears to be. It's not a day of blessing. It's not a day of breakthrough. The 29th of August is a counterfeit day, and the enemy has been preparing this trap for months. Right now, as we speak, hell is orchestrating what will look like perfect timing. text messages from people you thought you'd never hear from again, job opportunities that seem too good to be true, reconciliations that feel divinely orchestrated, investment deals that promise to solve all your financial problems, peace offerings from family members who've ignored you for years. But here's what your spirit needs to understand. When something shows up perfectly timed during a prophetic window, that's not always God. Sometimes that's warfare. Let me take you back to the Garden of Eden. Genesis 3-6 tells us that Eve saw the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. Did you catch that? Good for food, pleasant to the eyes, desirable for wisdom. The forbidden fruit didn't look poisonous. It didn't appear evil. It looked absolutely perfect. It looked like exactly what she needed. And that's precisely what made it so dangerous. Eve didn't fall because she was offered something obviously wicked. She fell because she was offered something that looked like everything she'd ever wanted, presented at exactly the moment when her defenses were down. The serpent didn't say, "Here, destroy your life." He whispered, "This will make you like God." Dear one, how many times in your 70, 80, 90 years on this earth have you said yes too quickly and ended up drowning in regret? How many phone calls have you answered that you should have let ring? How many doors have you walked through simply because they were open, without asking whether God was the one who opened them? I'm talking to the grandmother who took back the son who stole from her 5 times because he said he'd changed. I'm talking to the grandfather who lent money to the same relative who never paid him back because family is family. I'm talking to every senior saint who has confused availability with calling, convenience with confirmation. The enemy knows your soft spots. He's studied you for decades. He knows you struggle with saying no to your children, even when they're 50 years old and still manipulating you. He knows you feel guilty when people accuse you of being too spiritual or too selective. He knows you've been lonely, and he's prepared to use that loneliness as a weapon against your destiny. The 29th of August is when he strikes with surgical precision. The text will come from your prodigal child, not with an apology, but with a crisis that only you can solve. The investment opportunity will arrive through a friend from church, making it seem spiritually endorsed. The reconciliation will be packaged in language that sounds like forgiveness, but carries hooks of manipulation. The job offer will address your financial anxieties while requiring you to compromise your recently discovered boundaries. But here's the revelation that could save your life. The 29th of August is not a reward day, it's a filter day. God is not testing whether you're grateful enough to receive blessings. He's testing whether you're wise enough to recognize counterfeits. He's not measuring your capacity to say yes, he's measuring your courage to say no. What looks like resolution may actually be repetition. What appears to be progress may actually be regression wrapped in new packaging. The fruit in Eden looked good because it was designed to bypass logical thinking and appeal directly to emotional need. Every counterfeit blessing on the 29th of August will follow the same pattern. It will look good. It will feel right. It will seem perfectly timed, and it will cost you everything you've been building in secret. Think about it. Why would breakthrough come disguised as something familiar? Why would your new season announce itself through old connections? Why would God send your miracle through the same people who've caused you pain for decades? He wouldn't. That's not how heaven operates. When God sends authentic breakthrough, it often comes through unfamiliar channels. When he releases genuine blessing, it usually requires you to step into new territory, not revisit old battlefields. When the Almighty opens doors for his chosen ones, those doors lead forward, not backward. But the counterfeit will feel like coming home. It will taste like comfort. It will smell like safety. And that's exactly what makes it lethal. Right now, somewhere in America, there's a senior saint who's about to receive a phone call on the 29th of August. The voice on the other end will sound repentant, broken, desperate. They'll use words like, "I've changed and I need your help," and You're the only one who understands me, and this precious child of God will think they're hearing the answer to decades of prayer. But what they're really hearing is the enemy's final attempt to drag them back into a cycle that nearly destroyed them the first 5 times. The question isn't whether you're strong enough to help. The question is whether you're wise enough to recognize when helping becomes enabling, when compassion becomes codependency, when love becomes a trap that keeps everyone stuck. Eve thought she was making a decision that would elevate her. Instead, she made a choice that cost her paradise. The fruit looked like wisdom, but it delivered destruction. The promise felt like promotion, but it produced exile. The 29th of August is your Eden moment, chosen one. The fruit is being offered. The serpent is whispering. And your response will determine whether you step into your promised land or get expelled from the progress you've already made. If you're ready to pass this filter, if you're prepared to choose wisdom over warmth, discernment over desperation, I need you to declare it right now. Don't just think it. Don't just feel it. Say it aloud with the authority of someone who refuses to be deceived again. Lord, give me discernment. Let me see through every counterfeit. Let me recognize your voice above every familiar whisper. Don't scroll past this moment. Your voice carries power. Your declaration creates spiritual atmosphere. And what you speak right now could be the difference between your greatest breakthrough and your most devastating setback. But the 29th of August is only the beginning. Because what happens on the 30th will determine whether you have the spiritual strength to recognize the real thing when it finally arrives. Dear chosen one, let me ask you something that's going to cut straight to the bone of your soul. Have you been sitting in silence for months now, wondering if God has forgotten your address? Have you been crying out to heaven, only to hear your own echo bouncing back from what feels like brass sky? You're not alone in this. And what I'm about to tell you about the 30th of August will either shatter your understanding of divine timing or leave you wondering why you've been torturing yourself with doubt. The 30th of August is not a day of abandonment. It's a day of compression. Think about this with me. When an archer pulls back his bow, what happens to the arrow? It doesn't fly forward. It gets pulled backward, deeper, tighter. The further back that string stretches, the more potential energy builds. The arrow isn't stuck, it's being prepared for flight. And the deeper the pull, the farther it will soar. That silence you've been sitting in, that's not God walking away from you. That's God loading you with power you can't even comprehend yet. Look at Joseph. 13 years of silence after his dreams. 13 years. Can you imagine being 17 years old, receiving visions from the Almighty himself, and then spending 13 years in slavery and prison? But Genesis 41-14 tells us that in one single day, one day Pharaoh called him out of that dungeon and made him second in command of the entire Egyptian empire. 13 years of compression, one day of explosion. David understood this mystery too. 1 Samuel 16 shows us David being anointed as king when he was just a shepherd boy. But then what happened? He spent years running for his life, hiding in caves, wondering if Samuel had made a mistake. Years of silence, years of doubt. But Psalm 18:19 declares, "He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me." The cave wasn't his punishment. It was his preparation. Jesus himself knew the power of sacred silence. When Pilate demanded answers, when the crowd screamed for explanations, when even his disciples begged him to defend himself, what did he do? Matthew 27-14 tells us, "But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor." His silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. It was strength so profound that it amazed earthly rulers. But here's where it gets personal for you, beloved. I know you've been wrestling with God in the midnight hours. I know you've been asking, why did you show me the vision if you weren't going to make it happen? Why did you stir up this fire in my chest if you were going to let it burn down to embers? Listen to me carefully. The silence you're experiencing isn't God's absence, it's God's encryption. When classified information is transmitted between military bases, it doesn't travel in plain language. It gets encrypted, coded, protected, sealed, so it can survive the journey without being intercepted or corrupted. Your breakthrough has been placed in divine encryption, and the 30th of August is the day God begins the decryption process. You think the delays have been cruel, but they've been protective. You think the silence has been punishment, but it's been preservation. What God has planned for you is so valuable, so powerful, so life-altering, that it required this sacred compression to prepare your spirit to handle it. Every night you've cried yourself to sleep, wondering if you heard him wrong. You were being conditioned for endurance. Every door that slammed shut when you thought it would open, you were being redirected toward the door that was custom-built for your calling. Every person who walked away when you needed them most, God was clearing the pathway for the people who will celebrate your victory, not compete with it. The womb is the darkest place a child will ever know, but it's also the safest. For 9 months, that baby grows in complete darkness, complete silence, completely dependent on a life source it can't see. But without that compression, without that containment, without that sacred silence, there would be no birth. Your dream isn't dead, chosen one. It's in the womb. And the 30th of August marks the beginning of your delivery. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand about divine compression. He's been whispering lies in your ear, telling you that silence means abandonment, that delays mean denial, that closed doors mean you're disqualified. He knows that if you break in the silence, if you give up in the compression, you'll abort your own miracle. Don't you dare let him steal what God has been protecting. I need you to understand something that will revolutionize how you see this season. The pressure you feel isn't from the weight of your problems, it's from the weight of your purpose trying to break through. The intensity of your isolation isn't because you're forgotten, it's because you're being prepared for a level of blessing that requires solitude to develop properly. When NASA launches a rocket, there's a period called maximum dynamic pressure. It's the moment when the rocket faces the most resistance, when the atmospheric forces push back hardest against the ascending spacecraft. It's the most dangerous moment of the entire launch. But if the rocket can survive maximum dynamic pressure, nothing can stop it from reaching its destination. You're in your maximum dynamic pressure moment right now. The silence, the waiting, the feeling like nothing is moving that's not stagnation. That's the atmosphere of your old life pushing back against your ascending destiny. The 30th of August is the day you break through the pressure barrier. In this sacred silence that surrounds you right now, I need you to type these words in the comments. I will not break in the stillness. Say it aloud if you're alone. Let your voice carry the authority of someone who refuses to abort their miracle in the delivery room of silence. Because what's coming on the 31st requires a spirit that's been refined in the quiet, strengthened in the stillness, and compressed into diamond-hard faith. The countdown to your breakthrough isn't delayed, it's right on schedule. Listen to me very carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you about the 31st of August will either terrify you into action or haunt you for the rest of your days. You think the 31st of August is just another date on the calendar. You think it's just the end of summer, kids going back to school, another month turning into memory. But you're wrong. Dead wrong. The 31st of August is the cosmic courtroom where every decision you've made or failed to make during the 29th and 30th gets stamped with eternal ink. Picture this. Right now, there's a divine stenographer recording every thought that crosses your mind, every word that leaves your lips, every moment you choose courage over comfort. And on the 31st of August, that record gets sealed, locked, filed away in the archives of eternity, where even God himself won't change what you've written. You want to know why your life has felt stuck for so long? Because you keep missing these seals. You keep treating divine appointments like suggestions. You keep thinking there's always tomorrow, always next month, always next year. But Ecclesiastes 3:1 declares, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Your season isn't coming, beloved. It's here. and it ends at midnight on the 31st of August. Here's what's going to shatter your soul. What if your future grandchildren's blessings are hanging on your obedience right now? What if that business you've been afraid to start, that calling you've been running from, that relationship you need to end, that forgiveness you need to extend, what if all of it determines whether the next 3 generations of your bloodline walk in abundance or struggle? The Bible says in Exodus 20:6 that God shows mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thousands of generations, dear one. Your choices don't just affect you. They ripple forward through time like stones thrown into an eternal pond. That depression that's haunted your family tree, that poverty that's chased your ancestors, that broken marriages that seem to repeat like a curse. It all stops or continues based on what you do between now and the 31st of August. You think you're just one person, one small life in a sea of billions. But God sees you as the hinge upon which entire destinies turn. Abraham was just one man when God said, "In thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." One man, one choice, one moment of obedience that blessed billions, yet unborn. But here's where it gets dangerous, where hell starts sweating and heaven holds its breath. The 31st of August is not just a deadline, it's a death line. On that day, heaven closes the book on this season of your life. Your no's become permanent no's. Your yeses get locked into motion. Your silence gets interpreted as your final answer. Think about Esther, when Mordecai told her, "If thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" She had one moment, one choice, one chance to save her people. Miss it, and not just she dies, her entire family line gets erased from history. You're standing in your Esther moment right now. The kingdom needs you. Your family needs you. That ministry burning in your chest needs you. That healing you've been praying for needs your participation. That breakthrough you've been crying for needs your cooperation. But you've got less than 3 days to step into it before the window slams shut. Here's the part that should make your hands shake. Every excuse you've been making, every delay you've been justifying, every "I'll do it later" you've been whispering, it all gets judged on the 31st of August. Not by me, not by the world, by the one who numbered your days before you drew your first breath. James 4:17 cuts like a sword. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin. You know what God has been calling you to do. You've felt it in your bones, heard it in your prayers, seen it in your dreams. The question isn't whether you know. The question is whether you'll do it before it's too late. On the 31st of August, heaven doesn't just close a book. It ships your decisions into your future. Everything you carry through that gate grows. That bitterness you're nursing, it grows. That faith you're exercising, it grows. That love you're giving, it grows. That fear you're feeding, it grows. But here's the promise that should set your soul on fire. What you sow between now and the 31st of August, you'll reap 100-fold in the months to come. Mark 4:20 says those who hear the word and receive it bring forth fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. Your obedience in these final hours doesn't just change your September, it changes your lifetime. The seal is about to be set, chosen one. The courtroom is in session. The verdict is being written. Your future children are watching. Your ancestors are praying. Heaven is waiting. If you will not miss this seal, if you refuse to let another divine moment slip through your fingers like sand, shout it in the comments right now. I will carry only what belongs in my destiny. Because on the 1st of September, you'll wake up as either the person who seized their moment or the one who let it pass. And that choice, dear one, echoes through eternity. The gavel is raised. The seal is warm. What will you carry through the gate? Listen to me, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you will shatter every comfortable assumption you've made about God's timing in your life. This isn't just about 3 days in August. This is about a prophetic pattern that echoes through eternity, a divine blueprint that reaches all the way into 2026 and beyond. The choices you make in the next 72 hours will be reverberating through your bloodline for generations you'll never meet. You see, God doesn't operate on human calendars. He operates on prophetic cycles. And these 3 days, the 29th of August, 30th, and 31st, they're not random dates circled in red on heaven's schedule. They're the completion of a spiritual sequence that began the moment you first cried out to Him in desperation. Look at Scripture, beloved. Look at the pattern. Jesus didn't rise on the first day. He didn't emerge from that tomb after 24 hours or 48 hours. It was 3 days. 3 days in the darkness. 3 days when even His disciples thought it was over. 3 days when hell celebrated and heaven held its breath. But on that third day, everything changed. Jonah didn't spend 1 night in the belly of that whale. Not 2 nights. 3 days and 3 nights in the darkness, in the crushing pressure, in what looked like certain death. But it wasn't his grave, it was his preparation chamber. 3 days of compression before his explosive emergence into his calling. Do you see the pattern? Do you feel the weight of what I'm telling you? 3 has always been God's number of completion. 3 days of consecration before receiving the law at Sinai. 3 days of preparation before crossing into the promised land. 3 days before resurrection. 3 days before release. 3 days before breakthrough. And now, right now, you're standing at the threshold of your own 3-day sequence. But here's what's going to break your heart wide open. Most of God's people will treat these days like any other weekend. They'll scroll through social media, catch up on errands, maybe watch a movie. They'll go to sleep on the 31st of August, having no idea they just walked past the greatest spiritual opportunity of their lives. They'll wake up in September wondering why they feel different, heavier, more confused, like something shifted but they can't put their finger on what. And by the time 2025 bleeds into 2026, they'll be sitting in the exact same circumstances they're in right now, asking the same questions, carrying the same burdens, wondering why God seems so silent. But not you. Not if you're hearing this message with the ears of your spirit. You see, what happens in August doesn't stay in August. The spiritual momentum you generate or fail to generate during these 3 days will be the fuel that either propels you into 2026 as a completely transformed person, or drags you into that year still carrying the same limitations that have defined you for decades. Think about your life right now. Really think about it. Where were you 3 years ago? 5 years ago? 10 years ago? If you're honest, brutally honest, how much has really changed? How many times have you started over? How many times have you gotten your hopes up only to watch them crumble again? I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying this to wake you up. Because 2026 is coming whether you're ready or not. And what you do with these 3 days in August will determine whether you enter that year as a victor or a victim, whether you're finally walking in the promises God whispered over your sleepless nights, or still waiting for someday to arrive. The enemy knows what 2026 holds for you. He's seen the blueprints, he's read your file, and he's been working overtime to make sure you miss these 3 critical days, because if you don't, if you step into this prophetic sequence with intention and obedience, everything he's built to keep you small comes crashing down. But here's what I can't tell you yet. Here's what heaven is still sealing until the appointed time. What I've seen about 2026, what's been downloaded into my spirit about the massive shift coming to God's chosen ones. It's too powerful to release in this moment. Too dangerous to speak before it's time. But after the 31st of August, after the vault closes and the sequence completes, there will be another message. A deeper revelation. A prophetic word about 2026 that will either confirm your obedience or expose your delay. The question burning in my spirit right now is this. Will you be receiving that word as someone who seized their moment, or as someone who let it slip away. Because, chosen one, time is the one thing you can never get back, and these 3 days, they'll never come again. The gate is sealed, but the echo remains. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What happened on the 31st of August wasn't just the closing of another spiritual window, it was the sealing of a covenant. And whether you stepped through that doorway or watched it close from the outside, something irreversible occurred in the unseen realm. The ripples of your decision or your hesitation are already spreading across the waters of eternity. The gate is sealed, but the echo remains. You see, dear soul, most believers think spiritual moments are isolated events. They believe that missing one opportunity simply means waiting for the next. But that's not how heaven operates. That's not how the economy of the kingdom works. When God opens a door and marks it with dates, the 29th of August, 30th, 31st, He's not just offering you a blessing. He's orchestrating a sequence that will reverberate through generations. Think about this with me. When Moses lifted his staff at the Red Sea, do you think that moment only affected the Israelites standing on the shore? No, that single act of obedience created a testimony that would strengthen the faith of millions for thousands of years. One moment, one choice, endless echoes. But here's what's going to shake you to your core. The enemy knows about echoes too. He knows that when you miss a divine appointment, the silence doesn't just affect you, it affects your children, your grandchildren, the neighbor you were supposed to pray for, the stranger you were supposed to encourage, the ministry you were supposed to fund, the testimony you were supposed to carry. The gate is sealed, but the echo remains. Right now, as we speak, there are two kinds of echoes spreading across the spiritual realm. Those who embraced their moment on the 31st of August, who said yes to the uncomfortable, who stepped into the unknown, who trusted God's timing over their own understanding. Their echo sounds like a bell ringing across heaven. Clear, pure, unstoppable. But for those who hesitated, for those who chose comfort over calling, for those who let fear whisper louder than faith, their echo sounds different. It sounds like opportunity walking away. It sounds like doors creaking shut. It sounds like regret that will follow them into September, into 2025, into 2026, and beyond. Are you feeling this in your chest right now? That tightness, that knowing, that's your spirit recognizing which echo you set in motion. Look at scripture with me. In Joshua 3:15-16, when the priest stepped into the Jordan River, the Bible says the waters stood and rose up in a heap. But here's what most people miss. It wasn't just the waters in front of them that stopped. The waters rose up in a heap very far from the city of Adam. Very far. Miles and miles upstream, the water was responding to one act of faith. One step into the impossible changed the entire river system. Your obedience in those 3 sacred days didn't just affect your immediate circumstances. It sent shockwaves through the spiritual atmosphere that are still spreading, still opening doors you haven't even approached yet, still preparing hearts you haven't even met. But if you hesitated, if you let the 31st of August pass like any other day, then understand this. The river is still flowing, but it's flowing around you instead of through you. The gate is sealed, but the echo remains. Here's what's going to happen in the months ahead, and you need to brace yourself for this reality. Those who step through the gate during those 3 days will begin to experience what I call synchronized acceleration. Doors will open with impossible timing. People will appear with exactly what they need. Resources will flow from sources they never expected. It won't look random, it will look orchestrated, because it is. Meanwhile, those who missed their moment will experience something different. Not punishment. God doesn't punish His children, but consequence. They'll watch opportunities that feel familiar, that remind them of what they almost chose. They'll see others walking in the very breakthrough they were offered, and they'll whisper to themselves, "That could have been me." Do you remember the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25? 5 were ready when the bridegroom came. 5 were not. And when those 5 unprepared virgins finally arrived at the wedding feast, they found something that will chill your soul. The door was shut, and from inside came the voice saying, "I do not know you." The door didn't stay closed forever. But that particular feast, that specific celebration, that unique moment of intimacy with the bridegroom, it was lost. The gate is sealed, but the echo remains. But here's where grace enters the story, beloved. Here's where mercy interrupts the mathematics of consequence. Even if you missed the 31st of August, even if you feel the weight of opportunity lost, your story is not over. Because the echo of Christ's sacrifice still reverberates through every sealed gate, every missed moment, every broken promise you've made to yourself and to God. The same Jesus who told Thomas, "Reach out your hand and put it into my side," is telling you right now, reach out your faith and touch my faithfulness. The wounds in his hands echo with forgiveness. The scars on his brow echo with redemption. But, and listen carefully, grace doesn't erase echoes, it transforms them. If you missed your moment in August, the echo of that choice will follow you. But if you surrender that regret to the one who turns mourning into dancing, he can take the echo of your failure and transform it into the sound of your testimony. Picture this. A stone thrown into a lake creates ripples that spread far beyond what the eye can see. Some ripples carry the power to move mountains. Others carry the power to move hearts. Both are unstoppable once they begin. Your life is that stone, chosen one. Every choice you make sends ripples across the waters of eternity. The question isn't whether you'll create an echo, you already are. The question is, what kind of echo will your life create? Will it be the echo of someone who said yes when it was scary? The echo of someone who trusted when it was unclear? The echo of someone who stepped forward when everyone else stepped back? Or will it be the echo of someone who almost, who could have, who might have been? The gate is sealed, but the echo remains. Type in the comments right now, "Lord, let my echo be holy." Don't just think it, speak it. Let your voice carry the weight of your decision into the atmosphere. Seal your echo with the sound of your surrender. Because whether you stepped through the gate or watched it close, one thing is certain, your echo is already traveling. The only question is where it will land and what it will awaken when it gets there. Dear chosen one, if you think the 31st of August was the finish line, you've missed the entire race. August wasn't the destination, it was the deposit. And September is when heaven cashes the check. Listen to me carefully. Every single thing you carried through that spiritual gateway on the 31st of August has now become a living seed in the courtroom of eternity. September isn't just another month on your calendar. It's the month of reckoning. The month where heaven's Supreme Court finalizes the verdicts that will echo through the rest of your life. Right now, as you're listening to my voice, there are spiritual proceedings happening in the invisible realm around your existence. Angels are presenting evidence. Your choices from the 29th of August, 30th and 31st are being weighed on scales that determine not just your September, but your next 5 years. And here's what's going to shake you to your core. What you carried through that gateway is now carrying you. Think about a harvest field in upstate New York. When a farmer plants corn in May, he doesn't get to change his mind in September. When September arrives, whatever seed he planted is now a towering stalk, bearing fruit according to its kind. Corn produces corn, weeds produce weeds. There are no exceptions. There are no negotiations. Your August decisions were seeds, chosen one, and September is harvest time. If you carried bitterness through that spiritual threshold, bitterness toward the spouse who abandoned you, rage toward the children who forgot you, resentment toward the God who seemed silent during your darkest hour, that seed is now sprouting into chains, heavy, suffocating chains that will wrap around your heart, your health, your hope. But if you carried faith through the 31st of August, Faith in God's timing when nothing made sense. Trust in His love when you felt forgotten. Hope in His promises when your bank account was empty and your doctor's report was grim. That seed is now growing into wings. Wings that will lift you above every limitation this world tried to place on your 70-year-old shoulders. What you carried will now carry you. But here's where it gets dangerous. And I need you to feel the weight of this truth. Most people think September is a fresh start. They think, well, if I messed up in August, I'll just restart in September. That's not how heaven's economy works. That's not how spiritual law operates. Galatians 6-7 doesn't stutter. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows, not what he hopes to sow, not what he intended to sow, what he actually sowed. You cannot plant weeds in August and expect wheat in September. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. What did you actually carry through the 31st of August? Not what you told yourself you were carrying, not what you posted on Facebook. What was actually in your heart when that spiritual door closed? Was it faith or fear? Was it trust or trauma? Was it surrender or stubbornness? Because whatever it was, it's now your September reality. I'm talking to the 75-year-old grandmother in Chicago who's been carrying unforgiveness toward her daughter for 3 years. You thought you could hide it behind birthday cards and Christmas visits, but that poison seed went through the August gateway with you. And now, in September, you're wondering why your arthritis is flaring, why sleep won't come, why even your favorite hymns sound hollow. I'm talking to the 68-year-old widower in Brooklyn who's been carrying guilt over his wife's death. If only I had called 911 sooner. If only I had insisted on that second opinion. That guilt seed traveled with you into September, and now it's growing into depression that your Prozac can't touch. I'm talking to the 82-year-old saint in Queens who carried doubt through the 31st of August. Doubt that God still hears you. Doubt that your prayers still matter. Doubt that there's any purpose left in these twilight years. That doubt seed is now sprouting into spiritual numbness that makes Sunday service feel like mere routine. But listen to me, precious chosen one. If you're still breathing, if your heart is still beating, if you can still hear my voice cutting through the noise of your circumstances, then it's not too late to change what you're carrying. September isn't about restarting, it's about recognition. Recognizing what you planted, so you can either nurture the good seed or uproot the poisonous one before it chokes out your destiny. The Apostle Paul understood this principle when he wrote in 2 Corinthians 9-6, "Remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will reap generously." But here's the part that most preachers won't tell you. Paul wasn't just talking about money. He was talking about every seed, every thought, every choice, every moment of faith or fear. What you carried into September is now growing at supernatural speed. The spiritual atmosphere is accelerated right now. Seeds that normally take months to mature are sprouting in weeks. Generational patterns that took decades to establish can be broken in days. But the window is narrow and the stakes are eternal. If you choose to carry faith into September, real faith, not wishful thinking, if you choose to carry forgiveness instead of bitterness, hope instead of despair, trust instead of trauma, type these words right now. I carry light into September. Don't just read them, type them. Let your fingers feel the weight of that declaration, because your September harvest depends on what you're willing to carry forward from this very moment. But here's the question that will determine everything. Are you ready to face what you've been carrying, or will you keep pretending that September is just another month? Listen to me, chosen one. What I'm about to reveal will shake you to your very foundation. These 3 days, the 29th of August, 30th and 31st, aren't just about what happens in August. They're about what unfolds in 2026. You think you're making small decisions right now, don't you? You think these are just ordinary days, ordinary choices, ordinary moments that will fade into memory like every other weekend. But I'm here to tell you something that will stop your heart. by 2026, you will be living in the architecture of these 3 days. 3 days for 3 years. 3 days for 3 years. Let that rhythm burn into your soul. You see, dear one, God doesn't work in our timeline. He works in prophetic mathematics. Every choice you make between the 29th of August and 31st will echo like thunder through 2026, 2027, and 2028. What looks like a whisper today will become a roar tomorrow. Think about a rocket launch at Cape Canaveral. NASA engineers know that a deviation of just 1 degree at liftoff, 1 tiny degree, will send that rocket 500 miles off course by the time it reaches its destination. 500 miles. From one small adjustment at the beginning, that's your life right now. You're on the launch pad. The countdown has begun, and the trajectory you set in these 72 hours will determine where you land in 2026. But you're tired, aren't you? You're exhausted from years of waiting, decades of hoping, a lifetime of watching others receive what you've prayed for. You've buried dreams so deep you've forgotten what they looked like. You've accepted good enough when God had more than enough written in the stars before you were born. The enemy has been whispering the same poison in your ear for years. It's too late. You're too old. Your season has passed. God's moved on to younger vessels. And you've believed it, haven't you? You've let that lie seep into your bones like arthritis, making every step toward your destiny feel painful. But what if I told you that every biblical patriarch received their greatest breakthrough in what the world called their twilight years? Abraham was 99 when God promised him Isaac. 99. When Sarah laughed at the impossibility, God didn't rebuke her doubt. He turned her laughter into a prophecy. Genesis 21:6 says, Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. What looked impossible became inevitable. Moses was 80 when God called him from the burning bush. 80 years old. The world would have put him in a retirement home, but God put a staff in his hand and said, now we begin the real work. Joseph endured 13 years of slavery and prison before Pharaoh elevated him to second in command. 13 years. But here's what breaks my heart: if Joseph had given up in year 12, if he had accepted his fate, if he had stopped believing that God remembered his dreams, he would have died a slave. One more year, one more season, one more moment of faith made the difference between dying forgotten and saving nations. 3 days for 3 years. 3 days for 3 years. But here's where it gets personal, where it cuts straight to the bone of your reality. Right now, in this very moment, you're making decisions that seem invisible, harmless, ordinary. Maybe you're choosing to stay in bed instead of praying. Maybe you're scrolling through your phone instead of reading your Bible. Maybe you're entertaining old relationships instead of pursuing your calling. You think these moments don't matter because they feel small. But I'm telling you, by 2026, those small choices will have grown into the giants you're facing. Noah spent 120 years building an ark before the first drop of rain fell. 120 years. Can you imagine the mockery, the doubt? The mornings he woke up wondering if he'd heard God correctly. But when the floods came, when judgment and mercy collided, only Noah's family survived. His faithfulness in the mundane became salvation for generations. Jesus spent 3 days in the tomb, 3 days that looked like defeat, like the end of everything, like God had abandoned his own son. But those 3 days weren't destruction, they were reconstruction. Death was being rewired into resurrection. Hell was being transformed into hallelujah. And you, precious chosen one, you're in your 3 days right now. The decisions you make about your health in these 72 hours will determine whether you're vibrant or frail in 2026. The choices you make about your finances will decide whether you're struggling or stewarding wealth. The relationships you choose to nurture or release will shape whether you're surrounded by destiny helpers or energy vampires 3 years from now. But here's the part that will either terrify you or liberate you. What looks small now will be monumental then. That prayer you're thinking about skipping tonight, in 2026, you'll wish you had prayed it. That conversation you're avoiding with your adult child, 3 years from now, that silence will have grown into a chasm. That dream you're postponing because you think you have more time. Time isn't waiting for your convenience. 3 days for 3 years. 3 days for 3 years. I need you to understand something that most believers never grasp. Your future isn't hoping for your attention. It's demanding your obedience. Right now, today, in these next 72 hours, by 2026, families will look different because of what happens in your heart this weekend. Ministries will be born because of prayers you pray in these 3 days. Generational curses will be broken because of stands you take when nobody's watching. But if you sleepwalk through the 29th of August, 30th, and 31st, if you treat them like ordinary days, if you waste them on trivial pursuits, if you let distraction steal your divine appointment, then 2026 will find you exactly where 2024 left you. Older, more tired, carrying the same burdens, fighting the same battles, wondering why nothing ever changes. Say it now. My 2026 will be holy because my August is holy. But here's the question that will haunt you if you don't answer it correctly. Are you ready to build your ark before the rain, or will you spend 2026 drowning in regrets? Dear chosen one, what I'm about to reveal will expose the most insidious trap the enemy has ever laid for God's people. And if you don't recognize it, it will cost you everything you've been preparing to receive. Listen carefully. The moment that the 31st of August seal closes, the moment your spiritual coordinates lock into place, hell is going to launch its most sophisticated counterattack, not with obvious temptations, not with blatant sin, but with something far more dangerous: counterfeit blessings. September and October aren't going to feel like spiritual warfare. They're going to feel like answered prayer. People are going to reappear in your life with apologies that sound sincere. Opportunities will present themselves that look God-sent. Doors will open that seem perfectly timed. And every fiber of your being will want to believe it's finally happening. Your breakthrough has arrived. But here's the chilling truth. The closer you get to your authentic miracle, the more sophisticated the devil's forgeries become. Think about counterfeit money for a moment. The best counterfeit bills aren't obviously fake. They're not printed on notebook paper with crayons. No, the most dangerous counterfeits are the ones that fool bank tellers, that pass every test except the final one. They feel right, look right, even smell right. But when the pressure comes, when the heat is applied, they crumble into worthless ash. Haven't you experienced this before? Haven't you had people reappear in your life promising peace but delivering pain? Haven't you received offers that looked like God's provision but left you more broken than before? Haven't you been handed relationships that felt like divine connections but turned into spiritual vampires, sucking your anointing dry? That was practice. What's coming in September and October is the final exam. The enemy has been studying you for decades, beloved. He's been taking notes on every prayer you've prayed, every tear you've shed, every dream you've whispered into the darkness. And now, in these critical months following the August seal, he's going to craft counterfeits so precise, so perfectly tailored to your deepest longings, that your own heart will want to believe they're from God. Scripture warns us in 2 Corinthians 11:14 that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. But do you understand what that really means? It means his counterfeits won't come dressed in darkness. They'll come wearing the costume of your answered prayers. They'll speak the language of your prophetic words. They'll arrive at the exact moment when your faith is stretched thin and your patience is wearing out. The counterfeit always comes closest to the original, right before the authentic release. Why do you think that is? Because the enemy knows something about timing that most believers don't understand. He knows that the period between sealing and manifestation is when you're most vulnerable to substitution. It's when you're so desperate for movement, so hungry for breakthrough, so tired of waiting that you might grab the first thing that looks like what you've been praying for. But listen to me, precious saint. That job offer that comes in September, ask yourself, does it require you to compromise your values in subtle ways? That relationship that reappears in October, ask yourself, did they truly change, or are they just using different words to say the same things? That financial opportunity that seems heaven-sent, ask yourself, does it require you to trust in man's wisdom instead of God's provision? The counterfeit will always demand something from you that the authentic never would. The counterfeit will always require you to bend, to adjust, to settle for less than what God promised. The authentic will conform to you. The counterfeit will ask you to conform to it. Here's what breaks my heart. I've watched chosen ones accept counterfeits because they were tired of waiting. I've seen saints trade their crown for costume jewelry because the real crown was taking too long to arrive. I've witnessed people abandon their post just hours before their shift was supposed to end. Don't you dare let that be your story. Jeremiah 29:11 declares, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future." Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say God has backup plans. It doesn't say he has plan B ready if plan A takes too long. God has the plan. One plan, perfect timing, perfect provision, perfect outcome. But the enemy wants you to believe that God's too slow, that you need to help him out, that maybe this counterfeit is God's way of providing through unconventional means. That's not faith, beloved. That's desperation disguised as spirituality. The louder the enemy shouts in these coming months, the clearer your signal should become. When counterfeits start multiplying around you, when everything suddenly starts moving at once, when people are offering you solutions to problems you've been carrying for years, that's not coincidence. That's confirmation. Confirmation that your authentic blessing is so close, hell is pulling out all the stops to intercept it. Confirmation that what God has prepared for you is so powerful, the enemy would rather give you a substitute than risk you receiving the real thing. Confirmation that your breakthrough is not late, it's loading. The question that will determine your destiny is this: will you have the spiritual discernment to reject what looks right in order to receive what is right? The counterfeit always comes gift-wrapped in your greatest need. Type in the comments right now, "I will not trade my crown for counterfeit." Say it like you mean it. Say it like your future depends on it. Because it does. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how to recognize the authentic when it finally arrives, and why most people miss it when it does. Dear chosen one, I need to tell you something that might shock you to your very core. The warning you're receiving right now, this urgent message about the 29th of August, 30th and 31st, it's not what you think it is. You see, for 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been conditioned to believe that when God warns you, it means you're in trouble, that his voice carries disappointment, that his attention means you've done something wrong. But what if I told you that's the biggest lie the enemy has ever whispered in your ear? God's warning is proof of his love. Let that sink deep into the marrow of your bones, beloved. He does not warn what he does not plan to save. He does not call out to those he intends to abandon. When the Almighty takes time to interrupt your ordinary Tuesday evening, to pierce through the noise of your daily routine, to make your spirit stir with recognition, that's not punishment, that's preparation. Think about Noah for a moment. Genesis 6:13 tells us, "So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people." But notice what came next, the blueprint for the ark. The warning came with the way out. The alarm came with the escape route. God didn't warn Noah to watch him drown. He warned Noah to watch him rise above the flood that would destroy everyone else. That's you right now, dear one. You're not being warned to be destroyed. You're being warned to be delivered. Warning is not punishment. Warning is preparation. But here's where it gets personal. Here's where it cuts deep. How many times in your life have you heard God's voice and thought he was angry with you? How many times has his correction felt like condemnation instead of the tender touch of a father who refuses to let you settle for less than his best? You remember that night in 1987 when you felt him tugging at your heart about that relationship that was slowly poisoning your soul. You thought he was being harsh, but he was being protective. You remember that morning in 2003 when something in your spirit screamed, "Don't sign that contract," and you almost did it anyway. You thought he was being difficult, but he was being your defender. Every warning has been a love letter wrapped in urgency. A lighthouse is never built where there is no storm. Think about that, chosen one. When you see a lighthouse standing tall against the crashing waves, you don't think, "What a waste of resources." You think, "Thank God someone cared enough about the ships to guide them home." If God warned you about these 3 days, if he made sure this message found you in your living room, in your car, wherever you are right now, it's because he plans to keep you. The very fact that you can hear his voice proves you're not beyond his reach. The very fact that your spirit is responding to this warning proves you're still connected to the source. Dead battery don't receive signals, beloved. Empty wells don't echo. If you're feeling this stirring in your chest right now, that's proof positive that heaven hasn't given up on you. But I need to ask you something that might sting. How many warnings have you ignored because you thought they were criticism instead of care? How many times has God tried to redirect your path and you've interpreted his intervention as interference? How many divine interruptions have you missed because you thought they were inconveniences instead of invitations? The children of Israel wandered 40 years in a wilderness that should have been an 11-day journey. 40 years. Not because God was punishing them, but because they kept mistaking his guidance for his anger. Every time he said, "Turn left," they heard condemnation. Every time he said, "Don't go there," they heard rejection. But Deuteronomy 8:2 reveals the truth. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart. Led, not abandoned, not forgotten, led. And right now, in this very moment, as these words wash over your weary soul, the same God who led Israel through the wilderness is leading you through yours. These 3 days, the 29th of August, 30th and 31st, they're not a trap, they're a turning point. They're not a punishment, they're a promotion. Warning is not punishment. Warning is preparation. But here's the part that's going to break your heart wide open with hope. The very fact that you're still listening, not just hearing, but listening, not just present, but pressed into this moment, that's proof, undeniable, unshakable proof that you are chosen. Heaven would not call what it does not intend to crown. Think about that, dear warrior. God doesn't waste his breath on empty vessels. He doesn't send urgent messages to people he's planning to discard. He doesn't interrupt your evening, arrest your attention, stir your spirit, and flood your heart with recognition just to watch you fail. You know what this warning really is? It's heaven's way of saying, "I see you. I know you're tired. I know you've been carrying this burden for decades. I know you've wondered if I remember your name. But look, I'm still speaking. I'm still calling. I'm still fighting for your attention because I'm still planning your victory." The lighthouse doesn't judge the storm. It just shines brighter when the waves get higher. And right now, as August approaches like a spiritual tsunami, God isn't standing in judgment over your life. He's standing as your beacon, your guide, your way through the darkness and into the dawn of everything you've prayed for. So I need you to do something right now that might feel strange but will seal something sacred. Whisper it aloud, right where you are. "Lord, thank you for warning me." Say it until you feel it. Say it until you mean it. Because the warning isn't what's going to destroy you, beloved. Ignoring it is. And you, precious chosen one, you weren't meant to ignore anything. You were meant to inherit everything. But that inheritance has an expiration date, and it's closer than you think. Dear chosen one, what I'm about to tell you will cut deeper than any truth you've heard in decades. This isn't just about you anymore. It never was. You see, when God looks at the 29th of August, 30th and 31st, He doesn't see 3 isolated days in your calendar. He sees a generational crossroads. He sees your great-grandmother's prayers finally finding their answer. He sees your grandchildren's destiny hanging in the balance. He sees bloodlines being blessed or cursed by the choice you make in the next 72 hours. Every morning when you wake up and look in that mirror, you're not just seeing your reflection. You're seeing the face that carries the hopes of generations who came before you and the future of generations yet to come. Your DNA doesn't just carry your mother's eyes or your father's stubborn chin. It carries their prayers, their tears, their unfulfilled dreams, waiting for someone, waiting for you to finally break through. Think about your grandfather for a moment. Maybe he worked his hands to the bone in a factory for 40 years, never seeing the breakthrough he prayed for. Maybe your grandmother spent her nights on her knees beside that old bed, crying out to heaven for just one generation to rise up and claim what poverty, addiction, and defeat had stolen from her family tree. Those prayers didn't die when they did. Those prayers have been accumulating interest in heaven's bank, compounding year after year, waiting for someone in the bloodline to have enough faith to make the withdrawal. But here's what will shatter your heart. If you miss this window, if you let fear, comfort, or spiritual laziness steal these 3 days from you, you're not just forfeiting your own breakthrough, you're sentencing your children and grandchildren to inherit the same cycles that have haunted your family for generations. Scripture declares in Exodus 34:7 that God visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children, unto the 3rd and to the 4th generation. But beloved, if curses can travel through bloodlines, so can blessings. And right now, you are the hinge on which your entire family's future swings. Your obedience today writes their tomorrow. Picture this. It's Christmas morning, 2035. Your granddaughter, maybe she's not even born yet, is opening presents under a tree in a home that generational blessing purchased. She's laughing with a joy that doesn't carry the weight of financial fear because you chose faith over comfort in August of 2024. Her children, your great-grandchildren, are growing up in a family where mental illness, addiction, and poverty are just stories from the old days, not patterns they're destined to repeat. Or picture the opposite. That same Christmas morning, but she's opening presents while your son explains why there's no money for the things she really wants. She's learning the same lessons of lack that you learned, that your parents learned, that their parents learned. The cycle continues because someone who had the chance to break it chose safety over sacrifice. Your obedience today writes their tomorrow. Do you understand what's at stake here? This isn't about your personal comfort or your individual breakthrough. This is about becoming the generational bridge builder your bloodline has been waiting for. You are the answer to prayers prayed by people who died before you were born. The prophet Malachi understood this when he wrote, "And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse." God is looking for someone in every family line who will stand up and say, "The generational curse stops here. The poverty mindset dies with me. The spirit of defeat will not pass to my children." But it requires a choice. And that choice has a deadline. Your obedience today writes their tomorrow. Here's the devastating truth. Every day you delay, every moment you hesitate, every excuse you make isn't just affecting you. It's echoing down through decades you'll never see. The decisions of August will echo in their laughter, their tears, their victories. What you choose, they inherit. So let me ask you something that will either break your heart or break your chains. Do you want your grandchildren to inherit cycles, or do you want them to inherit blessings? Do you want them to struggle with the same giants you've been fighting, or do you want to slay those giants now so they never have to face them? Right now, type their names in the comments. Your children, your grandchildren, even the ones not yet born. Type their names and declare, "I seal their future with obedience." Because the tree you are today determines the fruit they'll taste tomorrow. And the 29th of August, 30th and 31st are the days when God is asking you to choose what kind of tree you're going to be. But choosing to break generational cycles isn't just about good intentions. It requires understanding exactly what spiritual battle you're walking into, and the enemy has been preparing for these 3 days longer than you realize. Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to carry 3 eternal truths with you, like precious jewels in your heart. First, the 29th of August, 30th, and 31st are not just dates on your calendar, they are divine appointments with destiny. Heaven has been orchestrating these moments since before you took your first breath. The breakthrough you've prayed for, the freedom your family line has cried out for, the abundance that's been delayed but never denied, it's all converging in these 3 days. Second, your obedience in this window doesn't just change your story, it rewrites your family's entire narrative. Every prayer your grandmother whispered in secret, every tear your grandfather shed in silence, every dream that died in previous generations is about to find its resurrection through your surrender to God's timing. And third, the enemy's greatest fear isn't your failure, it's your awakening. He's fought you so hard precisely because he knows what happens when a chosen one finally steps into their full authority. Your breakthrough terrifies hell itself. But hear me clearly, you are not walking this path alone. Even when the road feels uncertain, even when doubt whispers lies in the darkness, the God who numbered every hair on your head is still working behind the scenes on your behalf. He's moving mountains you can't see, opening doors you haven't found yet, and orchestrating blessings that will leave you speechless. And right here, in this sacred community we've built together, you have thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your struggles, who believe in your calling, and who are ready to stand with you in prayer. We're not just viewers on a screen, we're a family united by faith, connected by hope, and bound together by the unshakable love of Christ. Let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. When the 31st of August closes and you look back on these 3 days, will you be able to say you honored the moment? Will you be able to tell your grandchildren that when heaven called your name, you answered with everything you had? Before I release you into your destiny, I want to place my hand on your shoulder through these words and pray over you with the authority that comes from walking this same narrow road. Almighty God, creator of heaven and earth, the Ancient of Days, who sees the end from the beginning, I lift up every precious soul who has stayed with me through this message. Father, you know their names, you know their struggles, you've counted every tear they've cried in secret and every prayer they've whispered in the dark. Lord, I pray for supernatural courage over their lives in these next 3 days. Where they feel weak, be their strength. Where they feel uncertain, be their clarity. Where they feel alone, let them feel your presence like a warm embrace that never lets go. God, open doors that no man can shut. Close doors that lead to destruction. Give them wisdom for every decision, boldness for every step, and faith that moves the mountains standing between them and their breakthrough. For those battling financial fear, release your provision. For those fighting physical illness, send your healing power. For those wrestling with broken relationships, pour out your reconciliation. For those carrying generational wounds, let the healing begin with them. Father, let the 29th of August, 30th and 31st become the hinge point of their entire existence. Let these be the days their family remembers forever as the moment everything changed. Let their obedience echo through generations they'll never meet, but whose lives will be transformed because they said yes to you. Surround them with your angels. Silence every voice of condemnation. Break every chain that has held their bloodline captive. And let them walk into September not as survivors, but as conquerors who know beyond any doubt that they are loved, chosen, and never alone. In the mighty name of Jesus, who sits at your right hand interceding for us even now, I seal this prayer. Amen. Now, I need to hear from you. In the comments below, share what God spoke to your heart today. Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find the courage to step into their own breakthrough. Ask us to pray for specific areas of your life. Let this community surround you with intercession. And please, if this message has stirred something deep in your spirit, share it with someone who needs to hear it. There's someone in your life right now, a family member, a friend, a co-worker who's been feeling that same divine restlessness, that same holy urgency. They need to know they're not alone. They need to know their moment is coming too. If you haven't already, I invite you to join our family by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the notification bell. Every week, we gather here to be encouraged, equipped, and empowered for kingdom living. This isn't just content, this is a movement of awakening, and you belong here. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart, for letting these words penetrate the sacred chambers of your soul. Thank you for being brave enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, God isn't finished with your story yet. The vault is opening. Your moment has arrived, and I'll be praying that when the pages of history are written, these 3 days will be remembered as the moment heaven and earth collided in your life, and nothing was ever the same again. Until we meet again, walk as who you are, chosen, beloved, and destined for breakthrough. God bless you, mighty warrior. The 29th of August awaits.